Hey friends, this is Karen from Blue Rooster Farm, and today we're in the sewing room and I am going to show you how to make this really cute acorn pillow. It's a 20-inch pillow and I have the cutting directions available for free. So stick around if you want to see how this is made. All right, let's get started on making our pillow. This pillow is going to finish at 20 inches. It's going to be a square and it has an envelope backing. We also have binding around this pillow. Now, I have a picture of what the pillow looks like here, and it tells you that it's 20 inches finished. You can get these directions right here in the description box below. There'll be something down there saying free cutting directions, free pillow, cutting instructions, PDF, or something like that in the description box below this video. And you can click on that and it will pop up. And you can download it or you can print it, or both, whichever you like to do. Now on this side of the directions, I have resized our acorn block from last week, the 4-inch one, and made it a 12-inch block. And so these are the cut sizes for a 12-inch finished block. And so we have all of the sizes, how many you need, and we have the letters that tell you what piece is which cut. So we have our letter tiles here too. Now, if you are interested in getting these letter tiles or the 4-inch cutting directions, I'll put a link to that video here. These letter tiles will come as a PDF like this, and they'll just be, you can just print them off on regular paper if you'd like, or you can put them on cardstock, or you can laminate them and do both. I usually put them on cardstock and then laminate, and that makes them really durable and last forever. But this fall letter tiles will be found in the description box below the video that I put the link to. It's the same one that has the 4-inch acorn block, and it also has the peanut butter oat bars on it. So there'll be a link in the description box below to this video. So we have all of our cutting pieces here for our 12-inch block. Then if you flip this over, on the back of this is the cutting directions for everything outside of that acorn plus the backing. So everything you're going to need once you've made your acorn block is right here. And I also have a diagram here that shows which is which piece. So I've got those pieces right here, and I've got my binding made and it's ready. Everything else is cut and labeled. So the first thing I need to do is we need to make this block. And I was going to just have the block made already, but then I thought, well, if there's new people watching or people that haven't seen the 4-inch acorn block, they're going to have to go back and find that video and watch it. If you've already made one or you've already seen the video and you feel confident that you can make the acorn block, then you can just skip through this, fast forward it, and you can go on to the part where we're assembling the pillow front. So let's go ahead and make the acorn block first. Let me put this tray aside. All right, so what we need to do is we need to look at the directions for the 12-inch acorn block, and it's this section right here. And here are all of my pieces. So when we were working on the small 4-inch block, we had tiny pieces, and I said, you probably want to starch because accuracy is really important with a small block. But on this one, you don't have to starch. If you like to starch, that's fine. We're going to be working with very large pieces, and this is going to go together really quickly. So what we're going to start off doing is we're going to start off with this center here, and this is a square D, this big one right here, and it is 11 inches square. So you can't use a, well, I shouldn't say you can't. I was going to say you can't use a layer cake because you're going to have this 11-inch block. But you could, if you have a layer cake that has the same fabric twice, you could put two pieces together and then cut your 11 inches out. That would be fine. Also, you could make it a scrappy acorn. You could have several pieces of fabric all sewn together and then cut your 11-inch square from it. So you can use layer cakes if you want. If you have a layer cake that you've been wanting to use, everything else seems like it will work fine with a layer cake. You'll need a background fabric, and that will probably need to be yardage because you do have a couple of longer pieces. Also, the binding, unless you want to make a scrappy binding, you'll need more like yardage or fat quarters for the binding. So let's get started with this piece. This is an 11-inch square, and we are going to take piece C, and that's this piece right here. It's another square, and it is 8 inches. Yes, 8 inches. We're going to put right sides together, and we are going to put this C block in one of the corners so that two sides are lined up. Now, if you have some fabric that you have parts that you really want to showcase on your acorn, what I would do is I would take this and fold it in half, and you're going to be seeing this part right here. So if there was something that was right over here that you wanted to show, you might want to turn it this way so that if it was here, it would be definitely in your acorn. Also, if you have directional fabric, you might watch your direction. This is somewhat directional, but it's not enough to make any difference. And in fact, I don't know for sure if it is directional. This looks like it's going a different way. So mine is just, I really liked the way this block, I like these big bouquet parts here, and this is just kind of gray. So I'd rather have that covered up and showcasing more of this color here. This will all be in there. So what we're going to do is we are going to lay these right next to each other and match up the two sides. And then with a marker, I am just going to use a friction pen. You can use whatever you want. I wouldn't use anything that's going to bleed through the fabric because this will be the seam line right here. We're going to draw from a corner to a corner of that 8-inch square piece. And also do the same with your 8-inch square piece. If there is a direction to it, be sure you check it by flipping it back. This one doesn't have any set way of being placed, but you can check it. Now, if I wanted to, and let me see if this will work. It might not, just by the way I cut it. So if I have that one there, no, I've got both of these going this way. I was going to say sometimes if you have lines like wording or lines and you want to have that going in the same direction, you'll have to change the direction that you cut these two pieces. But I wasn't concerned because this is pretty much all stripes going different ways anyway. So I've got my line drawn right there. And now I'm going to, I can put a few pins. This is pretty big, and so a few pins in this would probably be wise just because it'll flop around a little bit. And that way it won't move too much. Again, when you're working with big pieces like this, you can be off a little bit and you can still get it pieced together. Okay, so now I'm going to take this to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew from this corner to this corner. And there we have that piece. And if I fold it back, it covers up my back corner. And so that looks good. Now, if you watched my piecing for the 4-inch block, you probably remember me stitching about a 1/2 inch away from this line right here. And then I cut between those 2 stitches, and then I had a big half square triangle. They were this size for the 4.5 inch or the 4-inch finished acorn block, and that was a good size, and I didn't want to waste that, so I said I might be using that with this, or not this pattern, but with my little acorns. On this, I could have done the same, and I would have this really big half square triangle, but I'd rather have the fabric, because what I do know is that one of our pieces from our pillow, we can cut from this fabric. So you can decide if you're a little short of fabric and you think you might need this fabric or this fabric here, go ahead and just trim 1/4 inch away. If you want a large half square triangle, go ahead and do another stitch line about 1/2 inch away and cut right down the middle, whichever you want to do. I am just going to use that big piece over there for a scrap. And you can use your rotary cutter for this too. So that goes to another use. And then we're going to flip this back, and I am going to just give it a finger press right now. And I'll press it good here in a little bit, but just a good finger press. Now we're going to take, let me move this aside. We're going to take the G blocks, and that is a, let's see how big these are, 3.5 inch square. And we're going to put those on these 2 corners right here. And we're going to do the same. We're going to go ahead and mark a diagonal line right from corner to corner. And again, if you have seam tape on the bed of your sewing machine, you can certainly use that. And we'll do the same with this one over here. Okay. Then we're going to take piece H, which is this one right here, and piece H is 2 inches square, and we are going to put it at the bottom corner right down here, and we'll also draw a line there. So I'm going to go to my sewing machine, and I can put a pin in each of these corners just to hold them in place. But usually when I push them through the sewing machine, I kind of adjust them right before I sew them anyway. Now you may notice here, and I've got all these pins in it, here is a pin cushion that I made with the 4-inch block, and I had a little tag that said autumn, and I shared those tags with you as well, but I thought it looked really cute with the colors, and so that one turned out really, really cute. So I hope you like that, and you can make one of these with that 4-inch block if you'd like, because there is a video for how to make a boxy pin cushion, and I think I can put a link for that here too. Okay, so I'm going to go to my sewing machine, and I usually do all one strip and kind of like a chain piecing. I'll go this way, pick up my presser foot, pull some string out, go this way, pick up my presser foot, pull some string out, and then go this way, and just get them all done at once without breaking the thread, and then I'll be right back. Okay, so let me cut apart my threads here, and I added an extra stitch so I can save the half square triangles off of these corners. And so just as you can see, just right about a 1/2 inch away, I made another seam parallel, and I'm just going to cut right in between those two. And so for the two sides, I'm going to get 2 half square triangles that look like that. And for this bottom one, you're going to get a small one that looks like this. Now these will need to be trimmed up when you use them, but right now they are all sewn together, so they're in good shape. And I always do this with my projects that have larger triangles that we're cutting off, because there's a lot of stuff you can do with half square triangles, and it'll be fun to use them in some sort of project when I just need something mindless to work on. So now I'm going to take this whole thing to my ironing board, and I'm going to press. I think I'm just going to press so that the seams go toward the corners. And that was very simple there, no problem there. Let's set this aside for a second and let's get our next pieces. We are going to be putting these side pieces on, and so we need the E's, the B's, and the F's. So here I have the E's, the F's, and let's see, these are my B's. Okay, so I'm gonna set this aside. Now on this, these are short, there's 2 sizes. The E's are shorter than the F's. So it's gonna go E, R, acorn top fabric, and F. And over here, let's go like this. Let's make it go like the direction it's going in. So this one's this right here. This, this, and this, okay? And then this one over here is going to go E, the short one, the acorn piece, and this piece, and I'm just kind of overlapping them. So here are the directions that they're going to go in. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the E and I am just going to stitch it to the bottom of the strip B, which is our acorn top, and I'm just going to stitch it a 1/4 inch away on both of these. And I've got those 2 pieces stitched, and we can just set those back like this. Now we're going to look at this top piece here, and we're going to take this, and we have a stitch and flip corner here, and so we're either going to lay it this way like this, or we're going to lay it this way like this. Okay, so in order to figure it out, let's take a ruler, and we are going to put this ruler where that line would be if we drew a line there, and we're going to flatten this out like this, and here we have an angle going like this. Do you see if it's the same as this angle? Nope, this one here is going this way, so we need to flip it. So let's try pulling this one down. So this one needs to go down like this. Now let's put our ruler on that corner and match it corner to corner there. And let's see how this one looks. This is the same angle as this. So this is the way we need to stitch it. So I'm going to draw a line, and what I would do, I would go ahead and find the corner right there and put a little line so you can see it. And then I'm going to draw from the corner of this piece of fabric on top to that line. My pen's not wanting to write too well on the fabric. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to stitch that one like that. So I'll go ahead and put a pin right there, and you can put a pin here too, especially if you are a newer sewer or quilter. Okay, now we've got to figure out which direction this one goes in. So we're going to have this one either going this way or this way. So we can start off like this, and we can put our ruler so that we have our corner out here, and It's going from the corner of this piece of fabric to that one. And there's the shape we get. The angle's going up like that. That is not the same. So let's try turning it the other way. This way right here. Put our ruler right there on that corner and flip it back. Now we can see they match. So this one's going to be sewn this way. They are not sewn the same way. So I would just make sure that you check to see that you are matching them up correctly and you are laying your blocks on top of each other correctly. Okay. We will then draw our line, and again I'm going to mark it back here so I can see where that corner behind there is, and it's right there. So then from corner to that line, right there. So I'm going to sew both of these on that line and just trimming off the threads. And when we push them back, they make a nice straight line. Okay, that's what you want. You want these lines to run together just like that. Now I could have, if I wanted to, stitched a 1/2 inch away from this one, just like my other one, and have a small half square triangle like that, but I don't usually go under 2.5 inches right now. Maybe sometime I will, but not now. I've got to stop somewhere. So these are going to be scraps, and they're actually, they work really great as my leaders and enders, so that will be fine. So I have one piece left, and that is my A, this piece right here. And so let's see, this one is the one that goes at the top. Move these out of the way here. Here is my block, and this one goes at the side. Okay, so right now here's what we have. We need to go ahead and put A on, and I'm just going to put A on the top one. So we're just going to put right sides together and sew 1/4 inch away right there. And while I was stitching that one, I went ahead and pressed. So I ended up pressing all this direction except for the square that I just added. I opened up the seam there. And then on this one, I ended up pressing all this direction. Okay, so now we're going to lay it together here. And you may notice that this doesn't look like it's going to fit, but remember we have a 1/4 inch seam on each side right here, so it will fit. So the first one we need to put on is this one right here, because it will match perfectly with this piece right here. And you want to make sure that you match the ends of the pieces just like this. And then if you want to put one in the middle, and mine look like they match up just fine. No loose side. If you have a side that's looser, that will go toward the feed dogs. Okay, and I'm ready to sew this. I'm going to sew 1/4 inch away from the edge. And I have that one on, and I pressed it, and I pressed that seam open. So there's what we have there. Then we're ready to put this one on. So I want to match up this seam right here to this seam. And those should lay right on top of each other because both of those were pressed open. Then I want to match this edge to this edge. And then I'm going to look at it. This one right here might be just a little looser, so that's the end that I'm going to have at my feed dogs. And this right here is one that I want to make sure gets pinned right here, because these two corners, just like right here, you're going to have an intersection, and it's okay if it gets a little off because it's just the acorn topper, and it can be any direction, any way. Sometimes it can get scooted down and be farther down here, but you want to get it close, and that one is right on. So we'll have this one right here pinned, so hopefully it will be close or just like that one. And then I'm going to put this side down, and I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch away. And I went ahead and pressed this one open as well, and it looks like our points match really well. And so here we have our acorn block, easy to do, very fun. You can do all sorts of things with this. You can make a set of placemats, you can make a dish mat, anything like that that you want with this. This would be fun. So now it's time to start the pillow assembly. We've got our block made. Now let's get the other board. Okay, so here is my board with the fabric to start the pillow portion. So here's our block. We're going to start working in the center going out. So we've got our block. Now we're going to put on our side units eye. And it does not matter which side you put eye on. It really doesn't matter. As long as you put the eyes on opposite sides and then the J's on opposite sides. That's all that you need to worry about there. So let's get the eyes and the J's, and we'll put the eyes on first. So I need eyes and J's, and this will go aside. Okay, so one of these is, let's see, 15.5 inches, and one of them is 12.5 inches. So here is my longer one. This would be my J, and this is my I. So I'll just do it like the pattern here shows. But of course, like I said, if you had your block like this and you put them on these sides, that would be fine. So we're just going to line these up. And if you had accurate cutting and you had accurate seam allowance, these should match up edge to edge. And so we'll put them edge to edge first. And then we'll see what we got here. Looks fine. So then I'll just put a pin in the middle just to hold those fabrics together and keep the one from slipping away. And then let's do the same thing over here. Match up our edges. Now, if you find that your acorn block is a little bigger, or if your strip is a little bigger, go ahead and match up your edges, and it shouldn't be off by very much. It should be off by very little. And then just kind of put a pin so that you match their centers. And then whichever side is the loose side, put that toward your feed dogs. And because this is a good length to make a seam across, it will distribute that extra fabric really nice and smoothly, and it won't be bunched up. So that would be fine. Just kind of watch that. And if you're noticing that happening a lot when you're sewing, check your 1/4 inch seam and make sure you're accurate on that. And I sewed both of those sides on, and I pressed them toward this sashing piece here because there's no seams and it will lay nice and flat. Same thing here, press toward this sashing piece. Now we're going to put our J pieces on the other two sides. And we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to match up our edges and sew a 1/4 inch down both sides. And I've got those two sides sewn on, and again press toward the sashing, and this is all sashed in. Doesn't that look cute? If you're wondering, and I haven't told you, I can't remember if I told you, but this is Slow Stroll by Fancy That Design House, and it's some that I had left over from a quilt that I had made last fall. I think it was a falling leaves quilt, and so I had some of that. I thought this would be perfect because I need something to go with that. It's actually a couch quilt. It's a large couch quilt, but I need something to go with that quilt on my couch. So it will match. I'll have not 2 matching pillows that go with that quilt, and it'll look really nice. So we've got this part finished. I'm going to put this aside, and we are going to grab our K pieces, and we need 16 3" by 4.5" pieces. So let me grab those. And here they are. I think I might have an extra 1 or 2 in here because I was cutting them for both pillows when I was making the first one, and I think I had a couple extra, and I thought, well, I can just, you know, be a little more selective of my colors. So what we're going to do is we're going to need 4 on each side of the acorn block. So I'm going to make 4 strips here just to kind of lay out my colors. Now you can do yours completely random if you want. That would be 100% okay. But I sometimes like to have a little balance in the colors. And so I think this is the first one. And so I'm just going to be matching up some of these, just kind of laying them out so no 2 rows look alike or the color pattern's not exactly the same, you know, as far as an orange, a green, and a yellow. I have several variations of those colors. Okay, so I have these 2 left. I've used this one twice and I've used this one twice. So let's see here. I almost, because we don't have much pink or purple in our fabric here, maybe want to go with pink and purple just to bring more of that color in. We do have pink on the centers and on some berries here. There is no purple though. And we do have gold here, and a few spots of gold. These are going to be my corner blocks. I went ahead and chose them all the same color. You can have a variety of colors if you like. I just thought, oh, I'll just kind of pull in that color of the acorn and do these. So these are going to be my corner ones. I think I'm going to do that. I'll save that one. I also am using an orange in this pattern, only an orange for the binding. So we'll have several of that pattern in there. All right, so I think this is the way I like it. Now what I need to do is I just need to put right sides together, and what I will be doing here is I will be doing these 2 together, sewing a 1/4 inch away, these 2 running right behind it, 1/4 inch away, and then doing these 2 1/4 inch away, and these 2 1/4 inch away. And I'll keep doing that, and then I'll take the first 2 that are on the thread at the back of my machine, and I'll know that those 2 go together. Now they might not get put together correctly, so I think I'm going to take a picture of what it looks like, because I do know that this is going to be fine with our colors spread out. Remember, these 2 aren't going to be next to each other. It's going to be in a different location on those strips. So I think I'm going to take a picture of this, and that way I'll know if my blocks are sewn correctly. And I have them all sewn together, and I also pressed them, and I just pressed all in one direction, and it doesn't matter, you know, if this one's going this direction or this one's going this direction. You're not going to be matching up your seams. None of these seams match up with anything. So I've just easily just pushed them in one direction. So before we add our corners onto 2 of our strips, let's take a look and see if we have a preference as to which strips go on which side. So here we have this, and I'll move them in just a little bit to make sure they fit. So if I have this one here, I don't want to put this one here, and you probably see why. I've got both of these pink, and I want it to be more scrappy than that, so I could do this. Okay, then I can put, I don't want the two purples to go together, so I can do this, and then it doesn't matter which way I go on this one because none of those colors, just trying to mix it up a little bit. Now, if this is the way I like it, then what I'm going to do, again, it doesn't matter which two sides you sew on first, just as long as you sew two opposite sides on. I'm going to sew these two sides right here onto this block first, and then I'm going to be sewing these two. And what I'm going to do with these two is I'm going to be putting these squares on each ends. So I will just lay those down like that, take them to the sewing machine, and stitch a 1/4 inch away from all of those edges. And I'll bring you right back. I'm also going to go ahead, let me set this aside here. I'm also going to go ahead while I'm away and stitch this piece onto the side of my acorn block, and it should match up. Again, if it doesn't match up, go ahead and match your edges. It shouldn't be off by much, and just let the side that's looser lay down toward your feed dogs, and that should take that bulk out. So I'll be back in a second. All right, so I have my first blocks attached to two sides, and I just pressed toward that sashing right here. And I didn't say a while ago, but this is an Essex linen by Robert Kaufman, and I don't remember if it's natural or what color it is. It looks like it's a little darker, but it is a Essex linen, and it just makes these quilts, I think, look so nice. It has just a nice texture, and it washes up really nice and soft. But it does have a looser weave, so you do want to be careful about when you're cutting. It might be a good idea to starch it because you will get lots of threads coming off the edges, but it is a really nice fabric. Now, I did not press these yet because we're going to decide which way we press them when we put them on. So now let's see, and I forgot which was which, but we can decide now. So was it this one in here? Nope, I don't think it was. I think this one right here was orange. So we're gonna get those oranges farther away. And get those pinks a little farther away. There we go. I think that looks good. Looking to see if there's anything too close. It looks like it's all spread out nicely. So now what I need to do, I've got these not pressed yet because they're going to go the opposite direction of the seams that we have here. So right here I have a seam going this way, so my seam on my strip needs to go the opposite direction, this way. And so that way they will nest very nice and flat, and you can feel when they're nicely nested in there. So let's just put a pin there, and this should be good. Yep, that's good over there. And let's put a pin on this side. This one's going this direction, so this one needs to go the opposite direction. And then the seams go right on top of each other, and when they do, that nests very nicely. Put a pin right there, almost on the seam. And then it looks like I'm good there, so I will just put one pin in the middle just to keep it from pulling down. It'll stay matched up with the raw edges. So that one's on. I'm going to do the same thing with this one. match up those corners. And again, if you have one side that has more fabric, loose fabric, that goes toward your feed dogs. And I'm going to stitch 1/4 inch away from both sides, and I will bring you right back. And there we have it. I went ahead and pressed the seams toward the sashing again on this one, and I'm thinking it looks just really, really pretty. So the next thing we need to do is we need to put some batting on the back of this, and we need to machine quilt it. Now, some of you might be saying, do I need to put batting and do I need to machine quilt? The answer is no, but because there are so many pieces on this, if your pillow is used and loved like our pillows are around here, and they're thrown on the floor and they're slept on and everything else, then it may be your stitches will be coming loose, something could tear apart, any of those things could happen. So I highly suggest that you quilt it. I am going to cut a piece of batting. This now should measure 21 inches. I'm going to cut a piece of batting that's probably about 23-inch square. It should overhang just a little bit, just in case it gets pulled as you're quilting. If you have a thicker batting, sometimes it gets a little more shrunken in. I am not going to put a fabric behind my batting. I find that it works just fine without that extra fabric, and that way I don't have to waste any other fabric, but I've done many of my pillows that way. In fact, that's really the only way I've been doing them these last several years, because it works just fine that way. So now we're ready to put the pillow topper onto our batting, and I've just got a few strings there. And this is my Franken batting. I have just taken 2 pieces and made straight cuts so that they're nicely straight, and I just butted them up to each other and did a zigzag stitch all the way down, and it quilts perfectly like that. And you can take lots of your small pieces and put them together so you don't have so much waste. And that's what I've done here. So just make sure it's a larger piece than your top. So I've got some overhang on both sides here, and smooth it down pretty good. Don't want any wrinkles on the top or on the batting. And what I'm going to use is just some Elmer's school glue, and you can use spray-based, a spray basting for quilts. Just make sure it is specifically designed for quilts, because you don't want your needle to get gummed up. That will cause lots of problems with missed and skipped stitches. So be sure, if you are using a spray base, that it's one that is for quilts. But I'm using school glue. You can use the stick glue too, and make sure it's school glue and not glue all, because this is a stronger formula and I don't know whether it rinses out like this. I do know school glue does. So make sure you have school glue. And also, I know for sure Elmer's works. I don't know about other brands. So I just pull back half of my pillowcase and I open my nozzle just enough so we can get a thin stream. And we don't want to oversaturate this at all. We just want a little bit on there just to hold it down while we are quilting. So I will probably just do real fine, and this is a real thin bead there. This right here is a little thicker, and I am just going to take my finger and just kind of push it down into the batting. And you could use like a foam brush or something like that, but I find that if I use my finger, I can kind of tell how wet it is. And once I have it, you know, nicely spread out like that, I will take my pillow and I will push it down And you might want to have a wet washcloth handy. That way you can wipe your glue off your finger. Okay, and so once it's down, right now we will just go to the next portion of it, and then we're going to come back and check the sides. So then we'll take this one and we'll lift it up, and then I notice it's clinging to this side, so that's as far as I need to go. And again, real thin, but evenly distributed. You just want to have it so it's not going to get a pucker that pulls very far. And so once you feel like you've got enough on there to kind of keep it secure, you know, you can pin baste and you don't have to have pins as close as we have this glue. So you can kind of decide how close you want those glue dots or streams. And that's another thread and another thread. I should have taken my lint roller first. Okay, and then once we have that, let me grab my washcloth here. Once we have that, we can pull this one down, and again, making sure that everything is nice and smooth. No puckers, no wrinkles. And we can turn it over and do the same thing here in just a second. Now, before we do though, I'm gonna come back up here now. And I notice that this is a little bit loose right here. I can feel it pulling right here, but right here it's a little loose. So I'm just gonna put just a dab right there. And the same thing, whoops, that one stuck. Same thing right here, just a little bit, not much at all. It doesn't take much at all. And then I notice right here is a little loose. My glue didn't come out this far. And this is just a really tiny bit. And I just like to get those edges because that sometimes gets flipped over. And when you see me doing this, I'm really not getting much out, just a few little drops, and then I'm smoothing it around. Okay, now I'm going to take it to my iron. I'm going to check the back here real quick. I'm going to take it to my iron, and I am going to iron with a dry iron so that it dries that glue. I have it all ironed down and the glue is dry, and I just went around and trimmed off all the excess batting so I don't have that to fool with. I think I've got about 1.5 inches on the outside of the pillowcase here. So now what we need to do is we need to decide how we want to quilt this. And on my other pillowcase, what I ended up doing was I did stitches going across like this, and I had them 2 inches apart, or I think 2.5 inches apart, actually 2.5 inches apart. Then I came the other direction and went this way. And that way, whenever you put it on point, they were diamonds. And I thought that looked really good. So I think I'm going to do the same thing here. And if you want to do straight line quilting like that, you can get your ruler and you can get a marking pencil. I would not use a friction pen for this because a friction pen can come back in cold temperatures. And I don't know how long friction pens have been around, but I also wonder in 20, 30 years, if you have a quilt that you've marked on the outside for quilting, if the chemicals in that maybe starts to show up again. I don't know how that breaks down. So I suggest using something water soluble or air soluble. Those are the best things that are easiest to come out. But I'm going to be using my walking foot, And my walking foot has this little bar right here that I can measure. And if I wanted to do 2.5 inches, I can take and put my presser foot and center it right there on 2.5, and then pull this bar all the way to the edge. And now this is going to sew 2.5 inches if I follow a seam. So if I followed that seam right there, this would be 2.5 inches away from it. And it's really nice because the only line I need to mark is my beginning line. So let me do that real quick. I'm just going to start in the middle, and that's the easiest. And the middle would be, you'd have 3 squares here, 3 blocks here, 3 blocks here, and that's right in the middle. And so I really don't need to have any lines where those seams are, because I'll just follow those seams, but I will want some here. And this is a disappearing ink, and it's air and water soluble. Now sometimes these pens can disappear too quickly. So be real careful if you're marking this that you're working right then. Otherwise it might disappear if you come back tomorrow. But sometimes I notice that sometimes even if I'm just working still, it disappears just within a few minutes depending on the temperature and the humidity. So there's my line right there, okay? So when I start, I can either start and go right on that line like this, or I can start with my bar along that line and just go like that, okay? And I'll go all the way on both sides to the edge, and then I'll turn around and then I'll draw my line this way and do the same thing, okay? And let me show you the other pillow so you can see what it looks like. So here is what the quilting looks like. We've got the stitches going this way and the stitches going this way. And you can see that when you turn it on point, they do make the diamond shape, just like that. So I thought that worked out well. Now you can do all one direction, or you can do squiggly lines. Anything you want to do, that's fine. Doing stitching in the ditch is also fine. You just stitch right there in the ditch and follow along on all your different areas like that. That will be a good stitch too. Sometimes people like to go like a 1/4 inch or so away from the seams on both sides, and that looks really pretty as well. But I'm just going to do the cross hatch so that I'm going to have lines going both directions. So I'll start that again. This presser foot is not one that comes with my sewing machine. This is a foot that is for several different machines, and I found it on Amazon and I've had it for a long time. It's not as expensive as the one that would go with my machine, and I figured I think I could replace it at least 2 times and still be less than the cost of the one that goes with my machine. So I figured really there's no loss in choosing the less expensive one. And again, this one's lasted very nicely for me. But what this does is it has feed dogs up here. And so when this is hooked to the bar, every time your sewing machine goes up and down, these feed dogs pull the fabric too, just like the ones that are on the base of your sewing machine. And so you're getting equal pull on the top fabric and on the bottom fabric. And this is called a walking foot. So if you're interested in one, I will put in the description box below, if I remember, the one that I ordered, and then you can look to see if it's one that will fit your machine. My machine is a low shank machine, so they come in low shank and in high shank. But if you don't see your sewing machine or your sewing machine on the list that I provide the link to, then I'm sure you can find one with your sewing machine on it. So these are real handy, especially if you're working with bulky items like bags or purses, and of course quilting. So I'm going to get this quilted up and then I'll bring you back. All right, I have it all quilted and I think it looks great. Let me bring you down just a little bit. So as you can see, I have quilted it going left and right and up and down, and so when it is on point like that, we have more of the diamond shape. I think you can see that there. So it turned out just fine, and remember, we did not use any fabric on the back. That is just our batting, and it worked out just beautifully. So now we are ready to trim this down. All right, so let's give this pillow a trim, and we need to take all of this batting off, and in order to do that, we are going to lay this right along that line of the edge of the fabric. And when I do that, I look to see how I did as far as keeping everything straight. I find my first piecing seam, and it's right here, and I look to see if the lines are showing that it's right, this, you know, they're staying right there on the same line, and they are. I also make sure down here at the bottom that this edge of fabric is on a line. That way I know my corner is nice and square, and it is. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a trim, and we're just going to do that all the way around. So there we go. And we're going to do the same thing. Now we've got a nice straight edge over here that's really clear and easy to see. And I can just make sure that looks good. And that is right on my seam, that line right there. So it looks like I kept it pretty square the whole time. Which, when you're making a big quilt, it can be a little off sometime. But pillows or mats or things like that, they're a little easier to keep nice and square. And if you need to, because this is just blocks on this one, you can trim it down. It's not like we have any points or anything, but this one is fine. And one more side. And there we have it, and this is all just waste unless you need it for stuffing or something like that. Now at this point, we are going to be putting an envelope backing on. So let's just take a look at this pillow backing here real quick. It consists of 2 pieces of fabric, one for the top and one for the bottom, and that's what makes it like an envelope, where it just kind of, you can open it up but there's no zipper. And so that makes an envelope backing. And these are really easy and fun to make, and you don't have to worry about getting it exactly the right size, because it can be, you know, different. I cut mine all different sizes just according to what I want and according to how much material I have for the backing. Now on this one, I used some kind of Michael Miller fabric. I forgot what the line was. And on the one that we're going to be making today, I am using a grunge, and it is the grunge that I used for the quilt that I made with this fabric last year. And it is piece M, and we've got 2 pieces, and it's going to be cut 12 by 20 and a half. Now if you measure your pillowcase and your pillowcase is not 20 and a half, it is a different measurement, then you're going to use however wide your pillowcase is, or long. It should be the same both ways. Mine is 20 and a half. If your cutting was correct and your seam allowance was correct, you should have 20 and a half. If for some reason it's 20 or 21 because your seam allowance was just a tiny bit off, or your cutting was just a tiny bit off, that's okay. Just make it that size. You're going to keep it 12 inches, but then the other measurement will be whatever the width or the length of your pillow is. So mine's 20 and a half, so I'm just following the directions. So what this piece of fabric is going to do, we're going to have basically one like this, and then another one that's going to be underneath it. Okay, and we're going to have this piece of coordinating fabric right here, and this is kind of a nice touch that I just like to do, and I call it the cuff because it hides all of your seams. There's no seams on it. And I just came up with this because we did the magic pillowcase, and I thought, well, that would be a great way to hide the seam on these pillowcases that have the envelope back. And so that's why I started adding this piece. And it also, if you didn't have quite enough fabric, it would extend that fabric out. So we just take a piece of coordinating fabric, and that is piece in, and on your directions it says that it is 6 inches by 20.5 inches, and you need just one. And so this one is cut the same length or width as your pillow, and then 6 inches wide. So if you had to change your pillow size and yours is 21, cut this 21 inches. So let's take this pillow away and let's put this together. So let's get the backing piece started. So I'm going to take one of my backing pieces for the envelope back, and I am going to put it right side up. And I'm also going to take my cuff piece, and it's in a coordinating fabric, and put it right side up. So both of them are face up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this piece of fabric, the backing fabric, right next to the edge of the cuff fabric. So we've just got them butted up right there. And I am then going to take this, and I'm just going to kind of roll it up just so it's smaller than the cuff when it's folded in half. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to bring the bottom part of the cuff up, and then we're going to match it. So we have all three pieces, the front of the cuff and the back of the cuff, and then the envelope backing piece right here. So there's 3 pieces, and they are lined up just perfect. So we'll put a pin there, and we're just going to put pins all the way down. And just be sure you have all 3 fabrics with their edges lined up, because you don't want to lose one of those edges and it not get sewn in. Then we're going to go this way and do the same thing. And you also want to make sure that part that you rolled up is away from this edge. Mine is right here, so I have plenty of room to sew, because you certainly don't want to sew this fabric when you're doing your stitch right here. And once you are sure that you have all the fabrics pinned correctly, we're going to go to the sewing machine, and I'm going to do more than 1/4 of an inch seam allowance here. I'll probably do closer to 1/2 of an inch, just to give myself enough room to make sure I don't lose any of those pieces of fabric and they all get enclosed in that seam. So I'll do that and be right back. And I have my seam going right across there, just like that. And now the fun part. We are going to take this and we're going to fold down the outside cuff fabric, and we are going to be pulling out the envelope backing fabric, just pulling it out like this. And you don't have to pull too hard and rip anything, just do it nice and easy. It will come out, and then it'll just give way all of a sudden, and it pops out. And here we have our cuff that has enclosed that piece of raw edge inside. Now, as you can see, this fabric has a right and wrong side. This is the wrong side. This is the right side. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this to my iron and I'm going to press it real carefully so that I make sure there's no pleats in there and all of that fabric is pushed away from the seam. I'm also going to do the same on the back. Then I am going to sew a stitch that is less than the seam allowance that we had. So if I do between 1/8 and 1/4 inch seam right here, I will catch that seam allowance that's inside there and it'll just hold it down and it will make this nice and flat too. All right, I have the seam on there and I have the top stitch and it's all nice and pressed. Now another option, you could do one of your decorative stitches if you have decorative stitches on your sewing machine. That's a good time to use those pretty stitches and I've done that before too. So we have this pocket right here, this cuff all attached. Now we need to look at this one. And on this one, what I'm going to do is just do a rolled hem. I'm going to press it about between 1/2 inch and 1/4 inch down. And then I'm going to turn it under and press it again so that my raw edges are all tucked in, just like this. And then I'm going to do a stitch right on this edge here and make sure it's nicely stitched down so it'll be a finished edge. Now another thing, you could serge it on your serger. That would be fine because you're not really seeing this, it's underneath this. So whichever you want to do, it doesn't have to be perfect looking because again, like I said, you're not going to see this. All right, that is all sewn. And we have a nice seam there. And again, like I said, that's not going to show. So if yours doesn't look that great, don't worry about it. Now, there are two ways of doing an envelope back. You can do one that has binding on it after you put it together, or you can do one that does not have binding. Now, what a pillow looks like without binding would just be, here's a pillow that I've made for our couches, and because it's not a quilted pillowcase, I didn't put binding on it. It's just got upholstery fabric, and it's just the seam. And then of course on the back, I didn't use any matching coordinating fabric because I'm just wanting this to be one color. So this one does not have binding. The one that I'm making today does have binding, and here is the binding, and it's binding just like on a quilt, and it gives kind of a little flange on it and it makes it look nice. So I'm going to be doing one with the flange, but if you don't want a binding on yours, you can do it without one. And basically what you're going to do, and I'll just show you just real quickly how you would do that. You would put right sides together, and you can determine, do you want your backing to be like the front of your pillow here and your sashing piece behind there to be this way, or do you want it this way? But you'll need to decide that. And then you're going to put right sides together, and you're going to put this piece with the cuff on it first. You're going to match up all the edges here. Then you're going to put this one on, and it's going face down too. And it is the one that just has the regular seam on it. And you're going to match it. Then you're going to pin all the sides, and then you're just going to take your sewing machine and you are going to sew all around this pillow. And I would definitely go back and forth a few times on your overlap here where your cuff is and over here, because you will have some pull on that when you're putting your pillow inserts in. So once you have that, then you can have it and pull it out. You probably need to trim your corners a little bit because it will be a little bulky, but you can just turn it inside out, and then you'll have a pillow that is completely finished without any binding. But if you want to do the binding like I'm doing, here's how you do that. You're going to turn your pillow so face down, and of course I've got all these threads on here because batting sticks to everything. And then we're going to put our, decide which way we want it to go. Let's see. I think I'm gonna have mine go like this. Okay. And it really doesn't matter. First piece we're putting down, and we're putting it right side up, is the one that has the rolled hem. And I'm matching up those edges all around. Then the next one, right side up, the one with the cuff on it. And I'm matching up all those edges. So basically, this is the way it's going to look when it's finished. The pillow's going to be on the outside. This is the backing of your pillow, just the way you want it to look. And then what we're gonna do is we can either use these clips, Wonder Clips, and go around, or we can use pins. And I usually like to use pins just because they seem to hold down a little better. And so I just put a couple in just to make sure that it doesn't start going wonky when I am sewing, you know, especially if it's pulling the back fabric faster than the front fabric. I don't want any pleats in the back of my pillow. And so I also will mark with pins where I want to go back and forth. So I want to go from here to here. I want to do that a couple of times, this section right here, because that is where I have my overlap there. And then after I get this all pinned, I am going to take it to the sewing machine, and I'm going to sew it. You can do 1/4 of an inch, especially do 1/4 of an inch, especially if your pillow has points that you need to make sure don't get covered up by your binding. But mine doesn't, so I can be a little bit more than 1/4 of an inch if I want. So you can choose how far in you want to go. Remember our binding that we're putting on, and I don't think we've talked about our binding yet, but our binding that we're putting on is going to be 2.5 inches by width of fabric. So that looks good. Here's our binding right here. And so you just want to make sure that you have the binding wide enough to cover, you know, if you go too deep and you bring your seam way over here, your binding's not going to cover it. So I would stay between 1/4 and 1/2 of an inch, okay? And I've never had a pillow pull apart from the ends, or anywhere actually, but so, and we're not easy going on our pillows either. I have 2 sons, even though they're grown, they sometimes act like children here and we might have pillow fights. So that's just something that might happen. So I am ready to sew this, and I will take it to my sewing machine and go all around, and then I'll come back. And now we have it all sewn together. I've got my backing attached to my front, and it's very secure. So now what we need to do is we need to finish off our raw edge by putting on a binding. And according to our pattern, we need 3 strips that are 2.5 by width of fabric. And I will tell you, with my first one, I went ahead and put all 3 of my strips together, but when it came to reaching the end, I could have probably managed with just 2. It was so close. If you are experienced at putting binding on and you do it the way I do it, you can put it on with 2. But I would go ahead and have 3, or at least have 1 ready in case you need some, because it was really right on 2. So I have 3 of them sewn together for mine, and I am going to be putting this on and machine sewing it to this pillow. Now I have just made a video about how to machine bind a project or a quilt. And I just put that out, so instead of walking you through that procedure on this pillow, I'm just going to leave in the description box below a link to that, and you can watch that if you're not sure how to put binding on, or if you want an easy way to put it on with a sewing machine. So this I need to get finished. So as soon as I get my binding on, I will come back and I will show you the finished product. And here is our finished pillow. The binding is on, and take a look at the neat edges. So if you want to see how I get such nice straight stitches around the edges of my binding, check out that video that I have linked below. And on the back, when I do my binding, I try to get it as close to the ditch as I can and try to stay on the background fabric, and that's what it looks like there. Of course, there's always room for improvement, but I think it looks great. So now we need to put the pillow in it. So let me grab my pillow. Now I like to use down pillows. They look nicer on the couch, they're softer. Some pillows that you get will have some pretty big feathers in them, and so those can be a little uncomfortable because they'll start poking out. And so a lot of times what I'll do is I will put some of the fabric like this, the ticking fabric, and it's kind of the thickness of a canvas denim, and it's really close together weave. And so that's what they used to line pillows with when they used to have feather pillows. And so if you get a down pillow or a feather pillow and you're noticing the feathers are popping out, try putting some of the ticking on it. And you can find that in the fabric department of Hobby Lobby. It would be with the bolts of muslins and your batting and stuff like that, kind of the utilitarian type fabric. But this is the pillow that I have. So I always have a seasonal pillow set on the couch, and what I do is I just have the inner part of the pillow that I change out and put into my new pillowcase. That way I only have to store the pillowcase, and that makes it much easier and less room. And I always have the insert. I don't have to go out and buy inserts all the time. And if you're wanting some down pillows, Amazon has them. They're just going to be a little bit pricier than the foam inserts or the poly foam inserts, so just check those out. So let me get this on. And so in order to put your pillow in, you just open it up and let's flip it over. Voila. There we have our brand new fall pillow, and I just love it. I think this one looks so nice. I love the colors, and this fabric is probably not available anymore. It's Slow Stroll by Fancy That Designs, and she does have a really pretty new line out right now that I think would look beautiful in kind of fall colors. And so you can check her out if you like this fabric. But she's got some Christmas and some fall, and she's probably got one from last summer that's also really pretty too. So you can check and see what they have available in the stores. So I hope that you get a chance to make this. I think you're really gonna love it, and I'd love to see the different fabrics that you guys choose. So if you make this, post it on my Facebook page under the posting that says that this video is out, and I'd love to see the different fabrics that these pillows can be made in. But if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. I would really appreciate that. Also, don't forget to like and share. And as always, I hope that you have a great week, and I hope to see you back here soon. Bye-bye.